Hey guys, and welcome to your 7th Java tutorial. I am Jamie, and let's get started. So, this tutorial aims to demonstrate exceptions and error handling in Java. And basically, the definition of an exception is an event which occurs during the execution of a program that disrupts the normal flow of the program's instructions. And I just took that from Oracle Docs, because, again, that gives the best explanation of what things are. I could have come up with my own definition for it, but again, that pretty much sums it up. But just to clear it up if you don't understand what that means, it basically is handling errors when you know they're going to occur, or if something occurs, why has it occurred, and how do we handle it. And the best example I can do for that is file input and output. If you have a file called test.txt, and the idea is to read from this file, if the user spells the word test wrong, like they put TES and miss out the T, that file doesn't actually exist. So it's going to throw an error because it's going to say, wait a minute, I can't find this file, it doesn't exist, I can't read from it. And the idea of exception handling is to basically handle it in a way that the program can continue execution, but at the same time tell the user that this went wrong and this is why it went wrong, and hopefully then provide a simple solution rather than just quitting and saying, actually, I screwed up completely. So yeah, that's what this is going to go through. And again, we're going to implement arrays in this, well, just a simple string array in this. And the idea of this program is it's going to ask the user for a number, and it's going to read the value in the array of that number. So if you don't recognize anything to do with arrays, I kind of went over them as best I could in the last tutorial, so I suggest you go and watch that. But if not, you should pick it up pretty simply by now. You should be getting there with the syntax of Java and how things work. So as always, we're going to start with scanner. Scanner equals new scanner system.in, and I'll need to import it probably. Thought so. So if I just import the scanner, and the next thing that we're going to do is have an int, and it's going to be called record number. So using variables. And the final thing is we're going to work with a string array, and it's going to be called records equals new string 5. So this is going to basically be an array that holds our records, which is just going to be a list of names basically. And at the end of the last tutorial I showed you how to populate arrays, like if you know what the values are. So we're just going to basically follow that syntax and go records 0, because indexes start at 0 not 1, equals Jamie. And we're going to go records 1 equals Annie. And records 2, so yeah, very, very tedious sort of process here, but you know, what can you do? I was supposed to say Simon, not Iman. Records 3 equals Tom, and records 4 equals Marge. There we go. So we've said it's going to be of size 5, so there's going to be 5 values in, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's just us populating our array. And the reason why it's underlined is it'll say the array is only ever written to, not read from, or something like that. Yeah, never read from. So yeah, that's what the next part we're going to do. But let's talk a little bit about exceptions that can occur in this. Now, if you're pretty sure there's an exception that can occur, there is a very broad way of doing this. There is a class called exception, and that basically covers pretty much every exception that can occur. It's very broad, and it's kind of a lazy way of handling exceptions, and it's also not very specific, because it'll give a general exception as opposed to something specific which can then be dealt with, because it picks up on absolutely everything. But in this specifically, we know that there's possibility of 2 exceptions that can occur. Firstly, since we're going to be getting user input and asking them to read from a record, there's only up to 4 numbers they can input: 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. But the user could be stupid and not know that, or not know that for whatever reason, and they could input 5. If I just clear that actually, because I realize that's actually showing my test run of it. So yeah, the user could still input 5, and if they type in 5, it's going to go, hang on a minute, 5 doesn't exist. There is no such record as 5. But rather than doing that, it'll throw out some Java spiel about there's an exception, blah blah blah, over about 3 or 4 lines, and then it'll exit. That's not really what we want to do. We want to tell the user gracefully that actually you've entered a wrong number. So yeah, that's kind of one of the exceptions that can occur here, and that's called an array index out of bounds exception. I think we might have briefly seen it in the last tutorial. So yeah, that's one of the exceptions that we can handle, and I'll just type that up here just so you guys can see. Array index out of bounds exception. Okay, and the other one that can possibly occur here is, well, we want them to put in a number, and we're going to be using next int again, which is another part of scanner, to get the next integer value. But there's nothing actually physically preventing them from typing the word. So if they were looking for record 2, they could still type in the word 2 like that. But again, records 2 like that doesn't exist, and it can't exist. It's not a number. So that's another problem as well. And Scanner particularly has an exception for that, and I believe it's called, what's it called? It'll come to me in a second. Input mismatch exception. That's what it's called. That's specifically to do with scanner input mismatch exception. But again, as always, the easiest way to show you this is, the easiest way to explain it is to just go ahead and do it. So when you're trying to catch that's brilliant. When you're trying to catch exceptions, that is exactly what you do. You use something called a try-catch block. And that was totally unintentional, by the way. Use something called a try-catch block. And try is a keyword in Java, and so is catch. And basically it just means, okay, something's going to happen here, or something can possibly go wrong here. But what you want to do is encapsulate it within these two brackets. So it's saying try and do something here. Okay, so this is the code that you know that's going to possibly go wrong, and it's going to try and do it anyway. Okay, so this is the code that we're going to have in here. We're going to have it basically saying record number equals scanner dot next int. So we're saying the next value is going to be an integer value, and we're just storing it in our variable up here. After that, what we want to do is system.out.println. What do we want to do? Record. Oops. In fact, no. Actually, we'll take this out of here, and I'm hoping it's still going to work. I did it in there before, but it doesn't matter. So basically, what we're saying is try and. In fact, no. I do need that. I do need this. Sorry. I was just trying to be a bit too clever there. So yeah, we're going to do another print line. What we're going to do here is go records, which is our array. Now we want a value in here, and that value is going to be the user's input value, which is stored in this variable. So what we can do is we can actually be clever and type in record number in here, because record number is actually an integer, as we specified up there, and it's storing the integer value that the user has typed. So what we're saying is we're going to try and do this. Try always needs a catch after it, and if I hover over there, it'll say that. Try without catch, finally, or resource declarations. That basically just means I need to type in catch. Now what catch does is basically, this does exactly that. It sort of catches the exception that's going to occur. And I spoke about this already. There is a general exception, and that's just called exception. And then you need to declare it the same way as a variable in a sense. So we give it a shortened name, and we're going to say EX, because EX short for exception. And you'll see that a lot in other people's code and in like application code as well, that people just say catch exception EX, or whatever the exception is. It'll be like that then EX or something on the end, just to say it's an exception. And after you've done that, you want to add curly brackets in, and in here we're going to do something. And a lot of the time you can do things like print the message. So system.out.println EX, and there's a method in the exception called getMessage, and that's going to basically hopefully give a useful output to the program. Like it should say something that might be useful to the answer, useful to the user, sorry. But again, we've used a general exception here. That covers absolutely everything. So if I actually go ahead and run this, in fact, yeah, if I just go ahead and run this, it won't do anything because I haven't actually asked the user for anything, sorry. system.out print line. See, I've already done this and not even on the ball, just by what I've just done 5 minutes ago to make sure it worked. That's terrible. So please enter a record number. There we go. So please enter a record number. If I just hit enter there and stop build, close, run. Please enter a record number. Okay, so we know that record 1 exists. We're going to just hit 1. Annie. Record 1, boom, Annie. So no, that works. Now we're just going to enter number 4 as well, just make sure that Marge exists, and Marge does exist. Now we're going to run it, and we're actually going to type in something 6. So as we can see up here, as I said before, 6 doesn't exist. And actually, yeah, we know that 6 doesn't exist. Hit enter, it just responds 6. And basically the reason it responds 6, is because that is the message that's being output here. If I take away that, and just hit run, enter 6, well, just got build successful. It doesn't actually do anything, it doesn't output anything useful. And that's what's going to happen. So we can put anything in here. We can literally do a system print line if you wanted, saying an exception occurred, and then if we run it, if I type in 6, an exception occurred. And that is a lot more graceful than coming up with a heap of red lines or anything like that. It actually tells the user an exception occurred, but it's still not brilliant. So what we can do is we can remove this. In fact, no, we'll keep that in there, we'll just change it a bit. So if I just remove the text in there. We've already gone over the 2 types of exceptions that I said occurred. One of them is an array index out of bounds exception. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy that, and we're actually going to paste it in here. So array index out of bounds exception, AIEX, array index exception. Okay, and then what we're going to print out in here is record does not exist. Okay, so basically that's just saying record does not exist, and that is a lot more useful than doing absolutely nothing. But we've also said, wait a minute, there's also an input mismatch exception if they type in a word as opposed to a number. So what else we can do is we can have multiple catch statements within a try block. So then we can type in input mismatch exception IMEX, and we can do the same principle here as well. We can just copy this, paste it down here, and say please, no wait, a number was not entered, please enter a number. And I'll need to import this exception, so add import for that. And also, it's always good practice as well, if you've got these variables here, just to go AIEX, for example, dot get message, and just append that onto your personal message. That's always a good idea to do as well. So IMX dot get message, and there. Okay, so now we've basically said, okay, we're trying to do this, we're trying to read the user's input, and we know that these exceptions are going to occur, and we're going to handle them gracefully as opposed to let the system deal with it. We're going to handle it in our own way. So if I hit run now, and I hit 3, Tom appears. Index 3, Tom, perfect. If I run it again, and I input 0, Jamie exists. That's cool, because Jamie is up there. So now if I input 6, it says 6 record does not exist. So that's the message there, 6. That's the message there, which says 6, and then it says record does not exist. That is a lot more useful than basically the spiel that Java would come out with. Then if I hit run again and I type in the word 6, null, so the message is null, because I think that's because it's actually expecting an integer and it's actually got a string or something like that, because again it's specific to scanner. And then it says afterwards anyway, a number was not entered, please enter a number. And what you can do from this is you can then loop through and go back and ask the user again to input a value, and you can basically just encapsulate this in some form of loop. and then do it up until the correct value is entered. But we're just going to stick with keep on running the program because it's easier. Now, the final thing I want to go over, and this again, that wasn't meant to be a pun, is something called finally. So try-catch blocks exist. There's also something called throw, which I will hopefully go over in future. But there's also a statement called finally. And it's always good practice as well to use a finally statement at the end of a try-catch block. And what finally does is exactly that. It's basically code to execute after this that will always execute, generally to clear up program, just to make sure that something happens. Like if exceptions occur due to other classes interfering and whatnot, this will still execute at that point. So it's a good practice. In this case, all we're going to do at the end is just do system.exit and then 0. We just want to exit the system at the end of it. And the reason why we do that is we don't want the program to keep running for whatever reason on top of that and just always having that exception there. We want it to exit and the user to restart it, for lack of a better thing to do. So yeah, it'll just do the exact same things it did before, but again, it's good practice to just include a finally statement. And the reason, in fact, the best example is probably going to be in the next tutorial when we do file handling, because file handling will include pretty much, I think, absolutely everything that we've done so far. I think we're going to make it include everything we've done so far, and we'll use a finally statement to actually close the reader, which I'll explain next time. Actually, I'll get onto that next time. I'm going too much depth into this one. But anyway, hope this guys, wow, my speech impediment today, I don't even have one, but my god, I'm terrible. So sorry about that. But yeah, I hope you've learned something today. Again, just been demonstrating try-catch block with finally at the end of it. We've gone back over arrays a bit and reading information from arrays. So yeah, I hope it's helped you, and I'll see you again next time for file input. So see you guys then.